guy. Your last guy is very interesting. And when we talked about him in the pregame,
You did this. You went like this.
I was like, but then you explained it to me. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. And I also think this is a bit of a perception guy as well.
Exactly.
And so that's why I think it's interesting. Our last two, they're both perception, but we both didn't see it on the other guy at first. So go ahead and give your last guy, Brian.
It's Jarrett Patterson.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious to me that number one, Jarrett Patterson's been pretty good the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
We all know that. But he hasn't been like an elite player. I mean, he was a honorable mention All-American last year. I think he was like second or third team All-ACC. He wasn't necessarily considered like – he wasn't a Liam Eichenberg. He wasn't a Robert Hainsey. He wasn't an Aaron Banks kind of guy with the honors and the accolades. And then you come into this season and everybody's like, Kane Madden's their best offensive lineman, which I'm like, okay, I don't – whatever. So when I look at Jarrett Patterson, I say, if whether he's a center or a guard, this is true no matter what position he plays. My opinion of him as a breakout is true no matter what position he plays. But I look at Jarrett Patterson, his first year he had some ups and downs of a typical redshirt freshman, but you loved the potential. And I thought he finished the season off well. Last year we sort of saw I didn't think he played great early in the year. He was good, but he didn't make the jump that I thought he was going to make. But the games leading into the game where he was injured against BC, he was playing the best football of his career, I felt. And he was really starting to take that next step as a player from just a physicality standpoint. He was moving people more, execution standpoint. His just overall effectiveness was just really starting to explode. And there was a couple games before he got hurt where I thought him and Liam Eichenberg graded out as their two best linemen, or he was right on par with like Hainsey in my opinion. And so I think I think the injury is one of those things that obviously hurt that ability to kind of, if he would have been able to finish the season off strong and play against Clemson and play against Alabama, I think his perception right now would be a lot different, because I felt like he was really ascending at that time when he got hurt. So when you look at him now and you say, okay, another year older, another year stronger, I think the injury is going to benefit him in this regard where it hurt him in another. It's going to benefit him in this regard. A lot of times when you have a lower body injury, the work you have to put in for rehab and to come back from that can actually result in you getting a jump in explosiveness, because you have to focus so much on that lower body and building up that lower body and the muscles around it, and really focusing on getting the agility back and the footwork back and things like that, that sometimes you can see guys kind of take a little bit of an even bigger jump than you otherwise might have seen. So I think we're going to see that this year. I think he's going to become more of a leader of the unit this year, and not just a leader from the standpoint of like the players knew he was a leader, but also from a perception standpoint, and maybe more of a little bit of a vocal leader this year. So I think that's part of it as well. And I think he's going to go from being like a second to third team All-ACC type of guy to a first team to second team All-American type of player. That's what I think we're going to see from Jarrett Patterson, where he's going to be one of the best offensive linemen in the country. Whereas last year, he was at best their third best lineman. Right. So it's hard for me to say you were an elite player when you were the third best lineman on your team. Now, again, part of that is because of how good Robert Hainsey and Liam Eichenberg were. Right. But I actually felt that he outplayed Aaron Banks a lot last year because he was more consistent than Aaron Banks. So consistency is Jarrett's always he's never played bad. When I say he didn't play as well as I expected, it was just more of he wasn't dominating. I don't know if he maybe has like one bad game his whole career. It's just, he has this kind of level of consistency, but now I think that consistency is going to be up here. It's just going to be a higher level of consistency. And then I think we're going to see more dominant moments from him. So I really do believe that. Now, whether or not that's going to happen is going to partly be dependent upon what position they put him at and then what's around him. Mm-hmm. And my fear about this prediction is sort of what we had with Drew White last year, where do you have him trying to spend so much time focusing on other people and getting everybody else right, that his game takes a step back? I hope that doesn't happen. I felt like we saw that a little bit from Sam Musfer in 2018. I felt like in 2017 was Sam Musfer's best year because he had Alex Bars and he had Quentin Nelson beside him, right? Or I mean, you didn't have to really worry about. You just go do your job, buddy. And Q's got all that. Well, then in 2018, you don't have Quentin Nelson anymore. And you've got a new guy there at left guard, and all these changes are happening. because then you move Alex Bars over to left guard. You got a new right guard. It's just there was a lot of changes. And I felt like sometimes Sam was too worried about helping the guys beside him, that he couldn't focus on his game. And then when Alex Bars got hurt and he had two new guys beside him, I felt that hurt Sam's game. That's my fear with Jarrett Patterson is that, does he have to spend so much time helping everybody else around him that it affects his game? That was my one thing that gave me pause about picking him. But at the end of the day, I was like, I think this kid's too good. I think he's too athletic. I think he's too talented. And I think he is in a position where he's going to really step up and become a nationally recognized player as opposed to just the Notre Dame fan base knowing he's really good. The rest of college football is going to know he's really good.
Well, and if you remember, a couple points here. So he was always kind of the fifth lineman that people would talk about because he wasn't one of the four that was going to be draft eligible, like that was going to be leaving, right? So he was always kind of the afterthought. Everybody, 4 out of the 5 are gone. 4 out of the 5 are gone. Well, there's still one left, and he's pretty darn good.
Like, really good, yeah.
The people just
I think his injury
kind
of factored in that too because we didn't see him late in the year.
And talking about the injury, when we had an opportunity to talk to some of the linemen, what they were saying about Jarrett Patterson, we lost the captain of our line.
Right.
Like that spoke volumes to me.
They knew that, and they told that to us, but that wasn't necessarily the perception nationally.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yes, That's exactly right. And that just highlights the importance of who Jarrett Patterson was on that line because there were 2 guys on that line that actually had the C on their jerseys.
And were legitimate leaders. It's not like
100%.
Those guys only had it just because they were veterans. They earned that seat.
And they were looking at Jarrett Patterson as a leader
during
on
the
offensive line. During the game.
Yes.
Right.
Now I think Jarrett takes that leadership and it expands.
Yes.
I agree. That's going to help him
a
lot.
So, the perception angle is very interesting to me for both Jack Cohn and Jarrett Patterson.
And I think Jarrett Patterson is going to play a lot better, too. This isn't just about perception. I actually think his game's going to take another level.
Sure.
As to your point, Vince, you made a comment, I think, was it earlier today or was it off there? I sometimes forget. But you made a comment, the third year is sort of that money year for linemen at Notre Dame.
Right.
Ronnie Stanley was inconsistent, but showed potential in 2013 and 14. Then year 3, he really breaks out. Quentin Nelson was really good as a redshirt freshman, really good as a redshirt sophomore. But then you think, well, how much better can that guy get? And then in 2017, he showed us how much better he can get. Mike McGlinchey was a little spotty as a redshirt junior at 2016. Was a second team All-American, but he had some inconsistent moments. Then he comes out in 2017, which was his third full year as a starter, because remember, he only started 1 game in 14, and he takes his game to another level. Liam Eichenberg, consistent in 2018, pretty steady in 2019, like pretty steady player, not dominant, comes out in his third year as a starter, and he's dominant, and he's a first-team All-American. So we've seen that consistently from Notre Dame. Even Zach Martin, who was just like otherworldly in 2013, it was 2012 when Zach Martin had his true breakout, which was his third year as a starting left tackle. So I think that third year is when we've really seen that money year for players. And Jarrett's walking into that now. And that's another reason why I look at it and say, if the O-line tradition is continuing from where it was, then this should be the year that we really see Jarrett Patterson take that big, big jump as a player.